The moment I turned this thing on, I saw something I absolutely wasn't expecting. It wasn't in the marketing and it's not on the spec sheet, but it completely changed how I think about what a gaming monitor is supposed to do. Pulling the Asus ROG Strix XG27AQDMG out of the box, the first thing you notice is the stand. It's a solid, flat piece of metal that plants itself on your desk with authority. It has this wide, geometric base that doesn't just look cool, it's actually useful. It's completely flat, so you can put your keyboard partially on it or use it as a shelf for your phone, which even has its own little groove to sit in. It feels incredibly deliberate. There's zero wasted space. The monitor itself clicks into the stand with a solid, satisfying thud. There's no fumbling with screws. Once it's assembled, the whole thing feels dense and stable. If you bump your desk, it gives a tiny shudder and then settles instantly. There's no distracting wobble. The adjustments are where you feel the engineering. Raising or lowering the screen has this hydraulic dampened feel. It moves smoothly and then just stops, holding its position perfectly. The swivel and tilt have just the right amount of friction, enough that it doesn't feel loose, but not so much that you have to fight it to get the angle right. The back has that signature ROG cyberpunk aesthetic with some subtle RGB lighting that you can sync up, but it's not obnoxious. It's more for ambient effect than a full-on light show. The bezels are razor thin, so the screen just floats in front of you. But the most surprising physical part is the panel itself. It's a glossy screen, not the matte finish you see on 99% of the gaming monitors. When it's off, it's like a black mirror. It gives the impression of something more like a high-end TV than a typical desk monitor. It does pick up some fingerprints if you touch the screen, but the surface feels slick and cool to the touch. It just gives off this vibe of quiet confidence. The first time I launched the game, I think it was a frantic round of a fast-paced shooter. I immediately understood the hype around OLED response times. It's listed at 0.03 ms, but a number doesn't prepare you for the feeling. As I whipped my aim around, there was absolutely zero ghosting or blurring. None. Every object, every enemy player was perfectly crisp and defined, no matter how fast I moved. It's a level of motion clarity that feels less like an improvement and more like a fundamental shift in how you see the game. Compared to the high refresh rate IPS panel I was using before, which I thought was fast, this feels like it's wired directly into your brain. The responsiveness is just on another level. The colors are just electric. Because it's an OLED panel, the blacks are truly black, not a dark gray, but a deep, inky void. It makes everything else pop in a way that's hard to describe. In a game with dark environments, you see details in the shadows you never knew were there. HDR content is where it really flexes, with highlights that get incredibly bright without washing out the rest of the scene. It's not perfect though. There's one little quirk I noticed. While the frame rate fluctuates a lot in a game, you can sometimes see a subtle flicker, which is a known thing with this type of panel. Asus have a feature called OLED anti-flicker to combat this, and it works really well to eliminate it. The trade-off is that activating it can sometimes introduce a little bit of stutter. It's not a big deal, and you can choose which one you notice less, but it's one of those things you only pick up on after a few hours of intense gaming. So when you scroll through the official product page, you can see exactly what Asus wants you to focus on. They shout from the rooftops that this is the world's first glossy WOLED gaming monitor. They flash the 240Hz refresh rate and that intense 0.03 ms response time everywhere. And that's all true. The performance is genuinely that good. They talk about the custom heatsink and their AI-powered gaming features. But what's interesting to me is that they don't emphasize as much. They mentioned a feature called uniform brightness, almost as an afterthought, tucked away in the specs. To me, that's one of the most important things for making this monitor livable day to day. OLEDs can get blindingly bright when you open a big white window, like a web browser or a document. This setting keeps the brightness level consistent so you don't get your retina seared every time you switch from a game to your desktop. It makes the monitor so much more comfortable for actual work. They're selling the extreme gaming performance, which it delivers, but they're underselling how good it is as just a regular monitor. It's always fascinating to see what brands think is the main selling point versus what you actually end up appreciating most in daily use. After a few days, the XG27AQDMG just seamlessly integrated into my setup. For gaming, it's a no-brainer. You boot up a game and are just immediately immersed. But I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it for everything else. That glossy screen and the perfect contrast make videos and movies look incredible. I get that same pop and depth you see on high-end OLED TVs, but right on your desk. I even found myself doing more photo editing on it. The color accuracy is fantastic. And seeing your images with those pure blacks and vibrant colors give you a much better sense of the final product. I did notice that I had to be a bit more mindful of my own lighting. During the day, with a window behind me, the glossy screen can act like a mirror. It forces you to control your environments a bit, but the payoff in the image quality is worth it. The feature I didn't expect to appreciate as much was the display widget center software. Instead of fiddling with the tiny joystick on the back of the monitor to change settings, you can just use your mouse in a simple app. It sounds like a small thing, but when you want to switch color modes or turn on the uniform brightness setting, it's so much faster and more intuitive. It's the kind of thing you stop thinking about while using it, in a good way. The monitor just gets out of the way and lets you enjoy what's on the screen. You don't really notice how much it changes your setup until you go back to something else. Now, it's not a perfect monitor. There are a couple of things that I kept noticing. The biggest one for me is the port selection. It has DisplayPort 1.4, which is great for PC, but the HDMI ports are only version 2.0. It's not a deal breaker, but it means if you're a console gamer, you can't get the full 4K 120Hz signal that the PS5 and Xbox Series X are capable of. With the Xbox, you end up having to choose between a high refresh rate or HDR, which feels like an unnecessary compromise for a monitor at this price. Another thing is the text clarity. It's one of those small things that only becomes obvious after a few hours of reading documents or browsing the web, while Asus has an algorithm to help. The sub-pixel layout of the OLED panel can make the edges of text look a little less sharp than on a standard LCD monitor. It's not terrible, and for gaming you'll never notice, but if you spend 8 hours a day writing code or reading articles, it's there. Finally, while the glossy panel is responsible for the stunning picture quality, it's a double-edged sword. If you have a bright light source or a window directly behind you, you will see reflections. It's manageable, but it's a factor you need to consider for your setup, unlike a matte screen which diffuses those reflections away. So, who is this for? If you're the kind of person who prioritizes motion clarity, pixel-perfect response times, and jaw-dropping HDR image quality for PC gaming, this is absolutely worth it. The feeling of playing a fast-paced game on the screen is genuinely next level, and it will make your games look better than you've ever seen them on a desktop. But if your day is mostly spent working with text, or if you're a dedicated console gamer wanting to max out your PS5 or Xbox Series X with 4K 120Hz, the difference may not be worth the price, and the limitations might be frustrating. The text isn't quite as crisp as some LCDs, and the lack of HDMI 2.1 is a puzzling omission for a top-tier gaming monitor. For me though, after using it for a week, going back to my old monitor felt like putting a gray filter over my ears. There's a quiet satisfaction in seeing a game world rendered with this much clarity and depth. It's a truly impressive piece of gear.